One thing right now is that if you've never seen me sketch, like even if you checked on my tutorials, I usually skip the sketching phase. I usually go through a lot of these sketches before I have something that seems to work somewhat remotely okay. Before I move on to the next step. So like one thing I'm really uh, making sure for this character is that I'm capturing her personality and her character and that sort of thing in her posing. So like I do have to make sure that the costuming is correct as well to some extent, because if I try to fix it later on, then the composition might be skewed. If let's say like let's say I find out, for instance, she wears a white shirt instead of a black shirt, then that would change the entire composition, right? So like I do have to take into consideration really early on what her costuming is, and just get the general big picture. It might look really rough right now, but that's pretty par on course for how my sketches usually go. I'm not here to. I always say you don't really sketch to impress other people. Like usually, when people show you sketches, they would have worked on it beforehand to make it presentable. But for me, I don't really care. Like people can make fun of my sketches all they want, but like ultimately, it's whatever works for everyone. That like that's really the point of a sketch. So trying to make sure I get the dynamicism of her body. So don't really. And making sure the structure works as well. So for people who are trickling in, you are free to ask questions and stuff. Rinzinha, the video is already posted on my Patreon. For anybody who is in the VIP Wolves or higher tier. So like if you're looking to get the VOD for yesterday, you can check it out. The only thing is I didn't manage to get the chat in. So like it might seem like I'm talking to nobody, but a lot of the questions and the stuff I'm saying is just to answer people. So like just don't worry too much about it. But yeah. So a lot of the questions might seem out of context, like the answers and stuff, but like hopefully. Oh, today there wasn't any other stream, so this is the only one for today, and I'm recording it right now, so that's fine. So I'm very wary about just the angling of everything, right? So like there's certain things, like for instance, if you're ever doing any poses, like stuff like this is really good. It's sort of like the contrappostal, if it's like a fancy term of back when it was this like coined in ancient Greece or something, where posing, there's opposite directions on the axes of the major axes of the figure. So like that's something I have to really think about when I am making the pose here, especially when I'm doing somebody who is very dynamic, and she's like a tomboyish type of like gunslinger type of character here. It's Revy from Black Lagoon, if anybody's missing out here. Missed it before. So like I'm like, unlike Lysithia from yesterday, I have to be wary about her dynamicism. So like one thing that somebody brought up yesterday is the idea of dynamicism and storytelling, and sometimes it's actually bad to be dynamic for certain characters. But in this case, being dynamic is good given the character that I'm drawing. But if you're drawing somebody who is more subdued and such, there's nothing wrong with being more stagnant. There's like not every pose needs to be like this super sexy, like contrapostal hips out, chest out type of pose. Like that's a mistake a lot of people make. A lot of times, if you're doing fan art of any kind, if you're doing something that seems disingenuous to the character, then like people will notice very quickly. It doesn't matter how good you are at rendering your character. If it looks like they're out of place, then that's not gonna help at all. Yeah, that's Revy from Black Lagoon. Like you can see, like, and even the official art, I would assume it's official art. All her poses are very dynamic. There's a lot of curves going on, a lot of axes, contrapostal axes and stuff. So like, it's something that it's the reason why I tell people, like, if you're ever going to do fan art, you really, really, really want to know the people you're drawing, because a lot of times, like, you might see online, and I'm not going to say any names, like when people do fan art, they have no clue what the material is. Like they're not actually fans of the material, so they're gonna draw them in very generic, in poses, and like it just doesn't seem like it's part of their character, and it's actually pretty disheartening a lot of time, just because like. They're a lot of times I'm not gonna name any names, but like some of them get really popular with just like when they're doing fan art and they're clearly not fans of what they're doing. So it's like and of course they get very popular because they're like drawing like really lewd stuff or something, and you know what I mean. But it's one of those things where. Hopefully, like one lesson I can give people is just to make sure that when you're drawing fan art, just know what you're dealing with, or else like again, like you're gonna even like in professional work for clients and such. Hello. Yeah, for professional clients, a lot of times, you might, if you're too used to drawing the same things over and over again, you might fall into the trap of like not being versatile enough to work for clients, like for different characters and such. Fan art can be really useful, or it can really hold you back, depending on how you think about it. So expression is another thing I'm really concerned about here. Probably because she's a gunslinger, maybe I'll just make her look slightly angry type of thing. She would probably be smiling because like all her official art, she's very arrogant in a lot of ways, like very tomboyish, very that type of archetype. So yeah, for people trickling in, I just want to mention that you can post in the Wolves Den channel if you have any questions, because I said yesterday as well to the patrons that like these streams are only as long as it's interesting. So like if I'm just painting, then I can just do it myself. So if I'm hoping there's going to be interaction of any kind. Just give me questions, that sort of thing, and that'll hopefully be helpful and make the stream a lot more interesting than just me painting the entire time. I'll probably have to change the arm here, depending on what the composition needs later on, but not really liking that. A lot of times is the reason why I also have a really sketchy sketching phase, just because some people, like comic artists especially, they have really clean line art, but for me it's like when you start adding colors and that sort of thing, you most likely will skew the composition, and I like being a bit more open-ended with the sketch, just because I don't want to be tied down to a line art and then find out that once I start painting it, it doesn't seem to work. So yeah. So as you can see now, like there's something to work with here. Like I'm just gonna do some really simple lighting because I'm not gonna. I don't want to do something that too difficult for stream and embarrass myself, but yeah, you can see there, like you can see that there's something to work with, and that's really the point of a sketch here. Just I don't like it doesn't matter. Like a lot of people will say like, oh, you should sketch this way or something, but in the end, at the end of the day, like nobody's going to be paying you for your sketches. Your sketches will have to be just whatever seems to work for you, and whatever will transition to the next phases in a coherent manner. There's going to be a lot of things wrong on the sketch, but I'm not going to care. I'm just going to go directly into maybe just get into colors now. So here I'm just gonna add just rough colors and see what works. Of course, like if you saw yesterday's stream as well, I ended up changing the colors quite a bit. So the power of digital paint is that I'm able to just retroactively change an entire color palette whenever I need to. So it's one of those things where it's not a big deal if you screw up early. It's you can always fix it later on. I'm feeling something into the reds just because her character is more energetic, so maybe just something leaning towards reds would be more fitting for the character, unlike like a Lysithia from yesterday. So this step is just establishing a bit of color here. A lot of times I go into like a speed painting. I'm not too sure what the final colors will be, and a lot of times I'm going to screw it up, anyways. So just know that a lot of times it's not about getting it right off the bat, especially for digital painting. I will even use channel layers right now. Like here, I'm gonna just give a just add in a bit of color here. I don't care how it looks. I'm just here to slap in some colors so that I have something to work with and that I'm not just having a limited palette on the canvas. One thing you'll see me often do is I'll most likely be fixing the face quite a bit because as we all know, expression really matters. So a lot of times the subtleties of a expression will have to be changed throughout. It happened with yesterday as well with the Scythia, where the expression really was a talking point, just because there were a lot of things to consider with a character like that. This one, not so much, just because she's more the cocky gunslinger type, so it's not really as nuanced as or subtle as other characters. one thing to mention if you weren't in the patron stream yesterday is that um, all of what I'm doing is still considered within the realm of just sketching. The reason why is because if let's say around an hour in I find out that I don't really like this piece, then I will most likely just throw this out. It's there. I always say my cutoff mark is around the 1.5 hour mark. If it looks meh by that time, then I'm most likely just gonna move on to something else. So like even something like this, I'm not gonna be too sure if it's gonna work out, but it seems like it's doing okay so far. So I'm not too concerned here. One of the points of contention is just how I'm going to tackle the face. Just because, I said before, it's not just expression, but the proportions of her face will really be of concern here. Just because, like, Black Lagoon is a more of the realistic type of anime, so it's I can't just do like the really cutesy like Madoka Magica type of like look. I need to be concerned with the proportions here. So I'm considering here whether she's gonna look at the camera or look in the side. So I'm most likely probably gonna have her look to the side here, just cause it fits her pose more. Like she's looking like here, and then she's gonna be looking that way, and she's looking at her gun, which makes it into a very interesting composition. But that, of course, can always change because this is digital painting. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to blur it out a little bit so that it is like a little trick that I like to do where I duplicate the layer and I blur it a little bit so that I can fade out a lot of the really sketchy parts as well as give me like a fresh eye on interpreting my piece here, just so that I can start seeing a lot more mistakes going on what I've done and see what I need to change. So for me right now, immediately I see that I need to perhaps up the saturation a little bit more here. It's very common in Photoshop because mixing colors on Photoshop, they tend to lean towards desaturation, like low saturation. So it makes sense that I most likely will increase the saturation a lot of times here. Yeah, it's a middle tone, so it's a mid tone. So the reason why is actually very deliberate. It's actually a really good question. The reason why is when I'm looking at Revy, the design for Revy here, you notice that her, like if we zoom in here, you notice that her hair is dark. Her her tank top is dark as well. Her tattoos are dark. So like if I have a dark background for her, then it will risk overlapping with her clothing. So a lot of times you'll have to really consider who you're drawing, because if you're let's say if you ever see my work, a lot of times my characters have white hair and such, right? When you have white hair, you can get away with darker backgrounds because the white hair will contrast with darker backgrounds. But if you have a character with a dark hair, with dark tank top, with dark tattoos, then you will have a lot of problems value-wise. So that's something to really consider. That's actually a really good question. It's something that I kind of gloss over, but it's something that I kind of subconsciously just do because of just intuition. But yeah. Now that's not to say that even like in this screenshot, you could have a dark background for her, but even then you see that her tank top kind of fades into the dark background, which you could have that effect if you're going for a certain look to her. But for here, I'm just gonna play with midtones here, just because recently I've been doing a lot of pieces with dark, like pure black backgrounds, so I'm just trying to vary my skill set here. You'll find that a lot of times, you'll see me just try different things with backgrounds. Like I could easily just go with a black background again, but it's one of those things where like I've done it so often recently that I want to kind of practice other stuff and make sure that I'm not like falling into like just the same old stuff over and over again, which is not always a bad thing, but like it's you know, just I treat fan art a lot of times as practice, so I don't want to like, if I wanted to take less risk, I will most likely do it for original pieces where I have to actually think about a lot of different things, like, whereas fan art, the design is already given to me, so I'll take more risks with them just because I don't have to think as much in terms of design and all that jazz here. So you already see, like, it's kind of coming together. Like, there's actually a semblance of somebody here. The colors are starting to work pretty well. Again, one thing I will focus on quite a bit is just how am I going to capture the face here. Just because I want to really get the personality in. I could make it blue. It's one of those things where, like, yesterday I did a blue piece, like, with Lysithea, so, like, I'm not really feeling the blue either, here, just because I did something like that yesterday, but, yeah, there's no reason why you can't do blue or that stuff. It's just, depends on the atmosphere that you want to go for, depends on the mood that you want to go for, and depends on what you want to do, right? Like, and of course, if you're really interested, I could always just like change it into something like this, right? This is what I would usually do in a lot of my pieces, but I'm just trying something new right now. And like when it comes to characters who are more energetic, like Revy, I kind of want to play around with reds more, just because like there's color language in consideration as well, so. So like reds tend to be more energetic, more fun, that sort of feeling, like, so it's one of those things where like I could even pump it up a little bit more, and that sort of thing. Like, would it be better in something like that? I'm picturing a little bit of bluish into the backgrounds. Like, I don't want to be pure red. Just because I feel like pure red backgrounds are a little bit strong in a lot of cases. So... I'm not liking that facial structure on her smile. She kind of looks like Laura Croft, like, honestly. But that's probably not a bad thing, given that her design would most likely have been inspired by Laura Croft to some extent. Whereas red and black only, yes, colors usually have, they have their stereotypes in terms of what they say, but there's always ways to make certain colors work no matter what, for whatever mood, right? So yeah, like, red and black pieces will become more violent if you really make it so, but, for, like, how do I say it, there's there's nuances when it comes to colors. If you're rendering a certain way, colors will read differently with others. It's so like individual case by case that I don't really want to generalize. But yeah, I don't know. Like you can make, let's just say like if you're really masterful, you can make a red and black piece that is a very peaceful, serene scene, right? Like it just comes down to like how the artist executes. Yeah. For me, I don't really want to make a really ultra violent piece, so like I'm basically playing it a little bit safe here. I'm most likely going to give her an open smile here. I think it doesn't work when she's closed-mouthed here. I could even just give her a cigar or cigarette or something, just cause it might be better on the other side. Yeah, something like that. So I'm gonna have to be very careful about the structure of the arm. So like it is protruding outward. So like this hand is actually incorrectly structured here. Something like that would be better. I would use references, but I would most likely save the time if I'm doing something like fan art. The most I would do is just get references for the character. But if I'm doing something super serious, like a original piece or something, then yeah, I would most likely look into getting references for the lighting or a ton of different things. Like a lot of cases, like the best references that the one reference that you will always want to get is lighting, just because if you're doing something really elaborate, then it's really hard to picture how lighting works in an environment that is more elaborate. So like in this case, because I'm just doing like a pin-up type of character, like one character on like a scene in a portraiture, then it's not really a big deal to work with lighting. The lighting is like very generic. It's like I'll even draw it out here really quickly. Like it's just like something like this. So like this, and like anything that's farther out to the background will be darker, and anything that is closer will be lit. So like these areas here, it's like a very, very, very common like no reference type of lighting where I don't have to really think about it. But if I'm really, yeah, again, like if there's something really serious, then I would have to. I would even take my own photos. Like, obviously, like if you're drawing dragons or something, then maybe you're not gonna be able to get like a reference of a dragon. But like, you can always get references by like just getting a lamp and just like putting like a blob that resembles sort of like a dragon, and just see how it affects the lighting in that situation. So I just noticed I'm missing her straps on the side here. It doesn't... Something like that, yeah. Again, drawing fan art can be problematic because I tend to miss out on a few details here. Yeah, I always tell people that if you're going to be professional, you want to have some sort of default like default settings for your work. Like what I mean by that is like, let's say you're like you're having a hangover and you're really sleepy, you're really tired, but you had to get something done. You want to have something where you know for sure you don't have to think about what to do. And if you and like by having like a default setting like you like on your work, then you can get away with a lot of things, even when you're not feeling like you want to draw. And you don't want to get into a situation where like every piece is going to be really hard for you. You just have to have something. I don't like the neck here. Sorry, I'm sidetracked. So one thing is, again, like as I started rendering, I started to see a mistake in anatomy here, and of course because it's digital, I can transfer it like that. Yeah, there. That's structurally correct now. But yeah, like as I said, like you want to be comfortable with certain things, right? Like it's a hard ask for everybody to just. You have to think about every single piece, because you're not going to get very far if you have to take like 4 hours plus for each character that you do for concept art. But yeah, it's one of those things. This is very default, let's just put it that way. This is like, I'm not really thinking too hard about the lighting, the anatomy, that sort of thing. Now I'm considering having her look at the camera, but that's a very minute point here. Make sure the structure of the straps makes sense here. Yeah, her pants are ripped, so there is a light value here. So again, very important for me to establish those as early as possible, just because if I'm balancing value differences, then I need to know for sure that they exist on the body here. Same with this side, so creates a nice curve here. I'm not liking this area, the value of that area. I could even make it a little bit lighter here. Yeah. So one thing to consider was that the reason why it was dark is because if we assume that the lighting is at the top area, like this area, then obviously anything here would be considered more lit than somewhere down here. So there's sort of like a gradient going on from dark to light, like that. So... But like there where I had it like this, that's a little bit too much to the dark side. So just gotta be very careful about that. Around this point where I started to establish a lot of these colors, I always start putting down the really sketchy, painty look that I usually have. Just because I don't want to put them down too early, or else it's gonna perhaps overpower the actual like fundamental structure of the piece. So around this point is where I'm gonna start just seeing if I could make the composition a little bit more interesting. That sort of fun stuff here. I think I do have to darken the lips here, just because I need a frame of reference. Yeah. So again, if you have any questions while I'm painting, feel free to post in the Wolves Den channel. The other thing I have to consider as well is the tattoos. That's something I kind of glossed over, but like it seems like it's being hidden on the far side anyway, so it's not a big deal. I really hate painting people with tattoos, just because it's like there's always going to be that one person where it's like, oh, that tattoo does not look right or whatever. But I'm not going to worry too much about it. since it's kind of hidden far end. But it's actually pretty prevalent problem I see like when I'm drawing Jinx from League of Legends, because like her tattoos are pretty distinct, and Riot seems to have put a ton of work on the tattoos, and I really don't like having to paint them every single time. So whatever means of trying to hide them, I would do it. It is starting to come together. The hands are kind of whack right now. Doesn't even look like she's holding a gun, so that's something to consider here. The other thing, speaking of tattoos, like the other thing that I find people can be anal about is guns, because I'm sure like there's some people who are American, and like they know like when you're drawing guns incorrectly, and it's like, oh god, it's one of those things where they have so many details a lot of times, and if you screw up with one detail, it's like it becomes a different gun. So it's like one of those things on the same tier as tattoos as being really freaking annoying. Yeah, like she has like Revy has really distinct guns as well. That's something to consider after. Her hair is kind of incorrect as well. I can maybe fix it a little bit more like that. I'm double checking right now if she has earrings. Doesn't seem like it. Thank you very much, Rinzana. Yeah, it's one really good thing about my style is just that I can get away with making a lot of mistakes, because when I make mistakes early on, like I can just use them as texture, right? Like there's an artist by the name of Kent Williams. If you're not too familiar with his work, he's a fine artist who has a really rough style, and it's something that I look up to a lot. And one of the things I remember when I was studying him, like many years ago, we're talking a decade plus ago, is that he said that mistakes become texture, and that's something that kind of stuck with me. So now whenever I do something, I'm not too worried if I make like an anatomical mistake or anything, because then I can always use it as just extra flair to the work. And there's something really interesting when you don't get things perfectly, just because art isn't about really trying to be perfect, especially nowadays where photography exists. You don't want to just be too perfect when it comes to your painting. You want to be loose. You want to show the world that, like, yeah, this is a painting, but it's a it's sort of like you want to be fundamentally strong, but at the same time you don't want to be so fundamentally strong that it just becomes a photograph. So like it's just more interesting nowadays just to have a bit of flair to your work. Yeah, the head didn't look correct here. I'm gonna even enlarge it a little bit here, maybe. There we go. That looks a lot better. You'll find that a lot of times I like to cut off the top of the head, just because like the shape of the rounded head, I really dislike a lot of times, compositionally. It's just one of those personal preferences. There's nothing wrong with showing the top of the head. It's just something I don't really. It's Kent Williams. I'll even type it here. I might have misspelled it, but I'm just going to double check. Nope, I spelled it correctly. There's apparently a anime voice actor named Kent Williams, but that's not the guy, I don't think. Yeah, it's if you go to images, You'll find his work. Yeah, that's a good question. There's a lot of artists who influence my style. Kent Williams is one of them, but I would say the biggest ones would be Yoji Shinkawa and Ashley Wood. If you're not too familiar with Metal Gear Solid, they're the artists for that game series. If you ever see their work, you'll see what I mean when I say I'm influenced by them. Just because they're very rough. There's something really like loose about their style. It's like they're not even trying to draw, but they kind of just get it. Like they just like somehow stumble upon like drawing Solid Snake or something, right? It's just I kind of like that feeling where some of their work looks accidental and it seems to work pretty well. But in general, like, for me, it's like, if you really want the long answer, one of the reasons why I went with this style is I told this story yesterday as well. It's because, like, if you look at ArtStation or something, you'll notice that there's a lot of artists who are doing the really realistic anime type of look. Like Koreans and Chinese people. Not to say there's anything wrong with that, but like there's just so much competition when it comes to like anime realism nowadays that like it's become like a cliche style. And I felt that I like the style. I like anime and stuff. I'm very anime influenced, but I really didn't want to do it the same way as everyone else. Or else, like business wise, it's just not smart idea. So for me, it's like I was influenced by people, but at the same time I was also like actively trying to avoid certain cliches with the art market right now. But at the same time, like I also don't want to be disingenuous, right? So like, one of the things that you can see with people is that if they're forcing a style because of money or otherwise, it always looks disingenuous. It always looks like there's something really wrong about the work. So you have to be really, sort of balance your natural take on stuff, and you have to consider the market as a whole when you're dealing with style. Because of course, if you think one way or the other too much, then so if you're not thinking about the business side, then people aren't going to pay you for your work. But if you think too much on the business side, then and not on the personal side, then you're going to make something that is disingenuous to you, and then your work will suffer for it, and your mental health will suffer for it, right? It's why there's like I've heard the argument before is that why don't you just like copy, like let's say who was it, like the patron, like Isaki Michan, right? The chick who does like just lewd like anime girls and stuff. There's nothing wrong with that, but at the same time, like if you're not, like a lot of people just try to copy her because she's making so much money on Patreon, and otherwise. But like if you're just trying to be her, then you're gonna be just a ripoff, and like you'll never be able to do something as like at her level because you're just thinking from a business side, right? So it's one of those things where like style has to be a balance of being organic and being smart with what you see in the market. Like by all means, if you're inspired by artists like her or like other people, but do it. But understand that it's just like if you're not into it, then you have one foot out at all times, then it's just never going to work out. And I've seen a lot of people trying to rip off her as well. It's just not. It just never looks the same. Same with me, Rinzen. Yeah, like one thing is like I'm constantly evolving my style. I love art in general, right? Like it's like I can name a ton of artists that I like that is not even close to my style. But it's one of those things where sometimes you have to start making decisions, and it can be very hard decisions, right? You're going to have to make hard choices on what not to incorporate in your work, and it comes down to experimentation as well, like just years of it. And you'll find that eventually you'll have preferences on certain things, and you'll hate certain things. So, for instance, like one thing I tell people when they're studying any type of artist is that you have to be judgmental, right? Like, so, like, I love Ashley Wood. I love everything about his work, but if I had to study him, I would have to critically analyze everything he does, right? And understand that even someone that I respect a lot in his work, like, there would be something that you can always say I can improve on that person's work. So, for instance, like, if I go back to Ashley Wood's work, I'll Google it just so that there's like a frame of reference of what I'm talking about here. So if I put up Ashley Wood's work, right? So, like, a lot of times his stuff is very loose. I love his work, but if I were to say one thing I can improve on is that, well, not improve on, I wouldn't say improve on, but like sometimes you'll draw stuff like this, right? There's nothing wrong with lewd stuff, like drawing like comically like erotic stuff, right? But like that's something that's not going to be in my wheelhouse. So like I'm not going to be that. I don't want to draw that type of content. So that's something I can change. The other thing I would consider is like, okay, I want to add a bit more color compared to his work, and just play around with more colors rather than just being so dark all the time. Oh, this just is somebody's study of Ashley Wood. Somebody's study. Yeah, this is Ashley Wood. So like, again, there's nothing wrong with his work. Like, I love his work, but like, again, if you're studying any artist, no matter how much you like that artist, you really have to say, I can do better. I can do this better than this guy. And because like if you just assume that, if you just say I love this artist, then the problem with that is that why would you need to exist if this artist does everything that you like? Like, there's nothing to improve on. So like you have to really try hard sometimes just to find something that you can look into deeper, and eventually you'll find that is your style that you settle on will be all the preferences and dislikes of every single artist that you study. So like you could make a Microsoft Word document or something where you'll go down the list of artists that you study, and then eventually you'll have like all the things that you want to take from this artist and all the things that you don't want to take from the artist, and eventually you'll find commonalities, and then you'll see where you'll end up with. And the other thing I don't really mention as well when it comes to your style is, again, you have to think business wise, right? So I hate having to mention it just because it seems like I'm being shallow, but I do take into account like how many people like my work. Like, I would sometimes try something just to see if people like my direction or not. So like that's something to consider as well. If you're just thinking about personal work, then yeah, like you just study artists and such. Is it possible to work several styles at once? To some extent, yes. But I generally think that you're like, honestly, every artist, no matter if they have an established style, they still have to, how do I say it? They still have to adapt to any studio or client that they work with, right? So you are going to be working several styles, quote unquote, every so often. But the important thing is that you are most likely going to be branded as that type of artist, right? So for me, it's like I'm a very impressionistic, very gestural type of artist. Like, if you want really clean mechanical robots or something, you're not going to come to me for that. So, like, everybody has their own niche, and you'll most likely be hired and seen based on that niche. Now, of course, you can always be that type of artist. I've seen this as well, where you are cheaper than other artists, and you're able to adapt to every single style that you can possibly think of. Like, I've seen people who have a business model like that, but the problem with that, I find, is that you're not going to ever, like, be yourself as an artist, right? Because you're constantly adapting to other people and that sort of thing, and it becomes a little bit of a downer when you don't get to be hired for yourself, basically. And, like, honestly, like, students usually start off like that. They would be able to adapt to any studio, no matter what style they are, because they haven't really established themselves, right? But afterwards, like, if you think about all the big name artists, like, you can pick out any artist, like, any big name artist, like, I could even go with Picasso or something, right? When I say Picasso, you will know exactly the image in your head of what his generalized style is. I could say Ashley Wood, and you'll probably have a generalized style. Rembrandt, or, like, even Banksy, like Banksy, the graffiti artist, you will kind of have a sense of, like, in your head of who they are based on that name alone. So that's what you want to aim for as an artist. You want to aim for, when people think Rinzinha, they think of a certain identity, right? And that's really what you want to go for. Because once you have that identity, you can charge people as much as you can. As much as you... Well, not okay, I'm exaggerating, but people will request for your work because you're the only one who can do it. And they'll be willing to pay you for it because nobody else can do it. So, like, that's the one thing that's you really have to consider with your work. I will say is, like, business-wise, like, a lot of times, like, people do not want to say this stuff, but, like, I don't really care. Like, it's whatever. Like, you have to, like, consider business whenever if you're ever wishing to be a professional artist. I need to get a picture of her belt, because none of my reference has it. Yeah. So her belt is darker than her pants. So that's something that I did not consider, like the belt color. So that's a big mistake on my part. So again, like, because, like, what you really want to do is you want to establish the colors as the general colors as soon as possible for any character that you're doing. If you don't, then you risk making problems where now my pants are the same darkness as the belt. So it doesn't really make sense design-wise. So I have to now lighten the pants a little bit more just to compensate. So that's a mistake. And that might change the composition as a whole as well. So like really, really not something I wanted to face there. But at the same time, like, I haven't like seen Revy in a long time. Like, the Black Lagoon is how many years old? So I'll make more of these mistakes than, like, if I were to draw, like, Fire Emblem Three Houses or something, just because that one is more recent. Yes, that's a great question too. So one thing I was talking about yesterday as well in the Patreon stream is that every single time I did something, I would translate it to traditional terms. So, like, I should have done that for this stream as well, but I wasn't aware that someone might be asking it. But a lot of times, like, everything I do digitally, there will be a way to translate in traditional. I would never do something that is so far-fetched, other than hue sliders. I'm okay with hue sliders because hue sliders can be seen as you're sort of, like, playing with glazes in traditional paint. But otherwise, like, I would try my best to, like, keep it within traditional terms. So one thing that will help you when it comes to traditional paint is that I feel it's a lost art in digital painting to understand how paint really moves physically. So like obviously like when we're doing digital painting, everything that we put down is 1-to-1. So like if I were to just have a pure purple, that's if I wanted that, digital will always have that, right? Like I can always just put it down no matter what. There's no context of physical paint and that sort of thing. Give me a second to drink a bit of water. But when I'm doing traditional, you're dealing with a physical medium where there's water involved, there's like paint flying around. So a lot of times, like even when it comes to color mixing, like that sort of thing, you'll learn a lot from traditional paint because of the way paint moves on the canvas. Like a lot of times the paint naturally moves around and mixes itself on the canvas, and that sort of thing you'll have to really understand. Because if you ever seen people who just learn digital and they don't really learn traditional, there's something wrong with their work. There's like I don't like it sounds like I'm being like how do I say it, being very shallow with it or being elitist, but a lot of times if you're just learning digital, your work will suffer for it, and it's unexplainable. Like there's just certain things that people don't learn when they just go with digital stuff. The fact that it's very forgiving is another problem with digital paint. Being able to undo that a lot of things. Like the moment you make a wrong step, you just undo, right? And that's a really bad habit. Even I do it a lot of times as well, but you might notice that even when I make mistakes, I try my best to paint over it first to see if it works. If it doesn't work, then I'll just undo it. But like the texturing as well is something that you learn in traditional paint, because in digital paint, like a lot of brushes can be very smooth. So even if I bring out the rounded brush here, you can see that again, like whatever I want, I put down on digital paint. But a lot of times digital paint can lack texture, and you'll find that texture can really accentuate a lot of styles. That's not to say your style in particular needs texture. Like you could be doing the Steven Universe or My Little Pony type of look, right? Where it's just going to be very digital flash animation looking. There's nothing wrong with that. But like if you're looking to be a painter, I would always say like I prefer having a little bit of flair in the texturing more often than not. So like that's something that a lot of people they make their paintings a little bit too smooth when it comes to their work. So I noticed Revy has a ponytail, but I'm almost considering not having it. Or at least exaggerating the ponytail here, just because I'm not feeling... Would it ever work here? I'm not really feeling the ponytail here. It's creating a silhouette I don't really like. Yeah, I'll give me a second here. I'm gonna. So this is where I would really think about the structure here. So hair down here. Let me see how her ponytail's attached. So it's right down the middle. A lot of the official art kind of exaggerates how the ponytail looks as well. So that's something to think about. So something like that might work. Or even make it thinner. It doesn't look like a ponytail if it's too thick. This is what I mean about sometimes you just have to take matters to your own hands here. Yeah. But yeah, I would always recommend like every single person should learn how traditional paint moves. If like there's something subconscious about the things you learn from practicing traditional that I just can't explain it. I'm liking having a little bit of smoke in the gun here. This was an accident, so again, this is one of those things where it's like, because I'm being very loose, sometimes you just get these little happy little accidents, right? So like, so stuff like that, like the smoke, it's pretty helpful. Do I want it bright or dark? Maybe bright smoke might be better. Something like that. I'll fix it later. But yeah, those happy little accidents. But and like if you ever do traditional, you realize there's a lot of those. Like you'll be able to make decisions on the fly, like based on like sometimes you just accidentally just put something down with traditional paint, and you'll get more ideas from it, right? And digital paint kind of starves you of that a lot of times, just because again, digital paint is so perfect that it's like overly perfect a lot of times, like especially if you just do digital paint. So sometimes it's just better like to be loose and just have fun with it. It's a lesson I learned from like when I was 18, like 12 years ago. I went to an art lesson, and there's this guy who was an incredible watercolor artist. And if you ever tried watercolors, you know that there's a lot of randomness going on, right? And one of the things I noticed when the instructor was painting with watercolors was that he wouldn't go anal about like any mistakes from like watercolor moves around on the canvas, so like sometimes it just moves around for no reason. Like even for someone as of his caliber, and trust me, he was a gallery artist, right? He was very, very high level. So even him, like with watercolors, it would move around randomly, and he's like, oh, there's no problem, right? He's gonna add stuff or subtract stuff based on how the watercolor naturally moves, and eventually it just works out in the long run. And that sort of thing kind of stuck with me, because again, like even for me here, it's like any mistakes I make, I'm not really too mad about it. It's just a matter of like, okay, I'm just going to use it to my advantage, and eventually like something will come out of it. And like a lot of texturing is like really cool and such. So, and like again, like when you're too used to digital painting, when you're too used to everything being so perfect, then you're not going to get into that mindset where like you can make use of mistakes. And that's something that I feel like it's just a big deal. Yeah, this is... So one thing I noticed here as well, I'm not really liking this ear. I'm just gonna move it around like that. So that's one thing that you can do in digital. I just went through the whole mindset of being traditional, but like sometimes you just have to move parts around, and I'm not gonna repaint something. Yeah, something like that looks a lot better. So like that's one of the really good benefits, where you can just change on the fly, and like it's very shameless. But in like if you were to do traditional, you can obviously like just repaint it, like paint over it and just repaint it. But here I'm just trying to save time, so and like having a bit of extra texture on the ear doesn't really do much, so it's like whatever. So the other thing, as you can see, so like remember the hair that I kind of erased here? Look at the texture that I created from just erasing it there, right? So that stuff, I can start using it to my advantage for a background, because it's creating very interesting shapes and textures that I wouldn't have otherwise, so... Maybe brighten up the nose a little bit here. Her eye colors are a bit orangey. Like something like that. I'll probably have to add in the shadow of the toothpick later on. But that's a really minute thing. I'm not liking the expression there, so... Yeah, like a more sinister smile works for her. I do notice that she has tattoos going up towards her neck, so even hints of that would be helpful here. I'm not going to be ass blasted to draw the tattoos perfectly. I'm not doing that. Just like if you saw my pictures of Jinx from League of Legends, I'm not going to bother. Screw it. That's one of the good things about my style. I can get away with like not being precise on every single thing I do. The nose needs a little bit of shine here. This area is catching too much attention, so I'm gonna have to think about how I can dye a little bit down here. That looks a little bit better. This actually doesn't look quite bad. Like, yeah, so like again, like texturing, random texturing can really give some ideas on what type of background I want. I'm just going to quickly check out more Revy reference, just so that I can maybe get a glimpse of what the environments are like. Get some ideas on just silhouettes of the background here. Black Lagoon anime. Yeah, there's stuff like pipes, there's stuff like buildings. Oh, I can't show that on stream. Yeah, it's just the city stuff, so I can most likely just like BS some buildings in the background, something like that. Just hints of it. Again, I'm not really gonna think too hard about it. It's ultimately just fan art. Like leak some colors in. I'm feeling some darks here. I need something to kind of break up the shapes over here. So maybe just bring some colors in. I'll even just exaggerate a little bit here. I'm trying to think if I need to saturate it a little bit more. No, I don't think that's the case. The ponytail is implied now because I'm not really feeling the silhouette that that it creates for this particular picture. Yeah, I'll probably have to adjust the color a little bit, but yeah, like one thing is I kind of screwed up the hair early on, which kind of made it so that I was painting based on the fact that the hair was wrong. So it's one of those things where I didn't really like I don't really like, even in the official art. If you check out the official art, a lot of times they kind of BS the ponytail. That's the one good thing about the like doing cartoons and anime and that type of stuff. You can kind of sometimes break structure and be fine. But like in this case, yeah, definitely, I really don't like the ponytail. Like, so one thing I have to mention is that I may have screwed up the hair here. So the reason I'll explain exactly why I have problems with this ponytail. It's because usually anime characters, you don't really want to show the roundedness of their head like that, right? So, but like if you ever know about ponytail, you have to bring the hair back and then push it into like a anchor point, like a hairband or something, before it becomes a ponytail, right? So what the animators do most of the time is they do what they did for Revy here, is that they exaggerated the hair bangs in front so that this silhouette here, I'll circle a different color here, this silhouette here isn't as egregious as just having a smooth rounded line on the back of her head. So like that was one thing that that just kind of stood out for me. Like in general, like there's a reason why anime characters usually don't have one ponytail. They go with two, like a Madoka or something, just because it just creates a much better silhouette than like having one ponytail in the back. It sounds really anal, but like you'll realize as you get better in art and that sort of thing, and you study more of these artists, you realize that the designers are very clever in what they greenlight for the final anime or a final comic and that sort of thing. Yeah, like there's a lot. Like one of the really fun exercises that I like to do is just like any media that you like. If you like certain anime, just really sit down and study it. Like download their all their concept art images on from Google or something, and really just study exactly what they might be thinking of, because you'll learn quite a bit more than you think just by taking a little bit of time to just like sit down and think about it. Because like remember that these people who create these characters, they're probably a council of artists who said they need something and they need it in a certain manner. So like whatever they green light is really going to be, they would have went through a ton of iterations before something worked. I don't like the colors here. I'll have to think about the colors a bit longer, but I'll just do the texturing for now. And yes, just a rounded head is not very appealing, for females at least. That's just because, how do I say it? You'll notice that a lot of anime characters, they very often try to hide it as much as possible. So like you might have characters with like this sort of hair. Like I'm just gonna BS it. Like that sort of hair, right? Like the spiky in the back sort of hair. They would do a lot of things just to break up that silhouette. It's just not. It's just when it's too rounded like that, it's just a little bit too perfect. It's never really going to look right. It catches a little bit too much attention as well, because it's such a perfect geometric shape. So yeah, you could say it's not as appealing as it should be. That's not different rules for different styles, obviously, but. I'll have to think about the colors a bit more, but it's, in terms of structure, in terms of the values and stuff, I'm okay with whatever I have here. So one thing I noticed, I made a mistake here. I will have to sort of tone it back down. I'm losing the posing dynamicism that I had in the earlier version. When I check out the official art for Revy for a lot of times they cheat the ponytail, and I'll even show you right now. I even found an image of it. So like normally a ponytail will be hidden behind the back of her head here, but because it just looks terrible. Like, let's say I paint over this, right? Like, you wouldn't know there's a ponytail if like you wouldn't know any better, right? So this is considered bad design, and it looks a little bit too parallel as well, and you really don't want to have a lot of parallels in your designs. Like just perfect mirroring, right? So what you want to do is, they usually just cheat by showing the ponytail no matter what on one side. It's one of those things where aesthetics take over logic, and like one of those design things. It's you start to learn quite a bit of those if you really sit down and study that sort of thing. You'll find that anime and cartoons in general cheat a lot of their designs, because like it's very hard to find to be able to have a design that just looks good on every single angle. It's just not possible. Like, you could bring out like some really great designs, and there will be a bad angle somewhere, right? So you have to really like consider those, especially if you're going to animation and designing for animation, where there will be angles where something doesn't seem right, and you'll have to tell your studio or show your design that on how you would fix that in animation. And how do I know this? Is because I went to animation school, so I'm not just BSing. I'm trying to think what I need for colors. I'm still thinking something is missing here. Brightening it seems like it works. I feel like adding a bit of blue kind of works as well. Yeah, it's a little bit... I wanted to make it a little bit more vibrant here. Just so that... Just because, yeah, like, I do like the red, but the reds were not strong enough to kind of push the energetic nature of her character. Probably even give it something like that. This actually doesn't look too bad. I said that with Lysithia, and then I fucking changed the entire color palette, so I don't know. It's one of those things where I might have to take a second opinion later on. But for now, it seems like it seems like it does work pretty well. You know, just get some textures in. I don't really care what they look like. As long as they resemble some sort of building, like construct, I'm fine with that. And backgrounds are some of the most fun I have when it comes to painting, just because, like, I can get away with, like, just whatever I need for a composition. So, like, if I need a certain color here, I can just bring it in, that sort of thing. And that is where you can start being very loose. I always say, like, the most stringent times when it comes to your work is when you have to start off the painting, just because like when you start, you have to be very careful with a lot of things, but later on you can be looser and looser and looser when you have a lot of things established. So I'm going to double check her face to see if I'm missing anything. Like if there's any like moles or anything, I have to consider that. But it seems like I got the face fine here. I will have to mention that the hair is not going to be one-to-one with the character, just because like the like in the anime here, like she has this type of hair, the one where like this sort of thing, but like this type of hair is a little bit too anime for me. So it's something I mentioned in the Patreon stream as well, where you have to cater any designs that you do for your own style. So like mine is a little bit more towards the realistic side as opposed to anime, and there's certain things that only works in a really cartoony anime style that it wouldn't work if you're doing something a little bit more realistic. It just breaks the laws of structure and how hair works. Like there's a reason why you don't see the people with that hair in real life unless they gel it for like conventions or something. It's just not possible. I'll have to add a bit of articulation on this, just because the abs are not really reading properly, and I'll probably have to get reference for that later on as well. Maybe a little bit more articulation on the eye here, just so that it reads like an eye and not something else here. I'm not liking the far side. I'm gonna redo it after shading it out. The hair should be a little bit darker here. Yeah, it's something I noticed immediately. That's not too bad. Need a bit of more brightness here. This shape around here is a little bit too big, background wise. So I need something to kind of break it up a little bit. I don't know what, but I'll figure it out. Yeah, even hints of like maybe there's an opening here and there's buildings like that. That makes it a little bit more interesting to look at. I'll have to bring it over here then, which means that I would say the smoke would need to be darkened. Yeah, that looks a lot better. What time is it? Not too bad, isn't it? Yeah, not too bad. Like for an hour and a half here. This area, problematic. Yeah, it's a little bit problematic. Maybe even a little bit of shine like that. Yeah, that looks pretty cool. Just having a little bit of arm shine there, deltoid. I'll probably have to articulate the arms a little bit because she is obviously more of the muscular type. I really like Jeremy Mann's work. That's another artist completely forgot about him, just because he doesn't. I don't really like his figure work a lot of times, but his city work is incredible. That's a big influence for mine, especially when it comes to backgrounds. He's yeah, like if you haven't seen Jeremy Mann, I'll even. Yeah, if you ever see his work, this is fantastic. Like, it's brilliant cityscapes and stuff. He does figure work as well, but I always say it's not as strong as the city work. His city work just looks fantastic. Like, it goes to show just how much you can say with just a few brushstrokes. And like you can see there's some resemblance to my work to his, just because I copied him, like in terms of how to deal with backgrounds and stuff. But yeah, it's really cool. I think I need a bit of reds in the background here. Yeah, that looks better. This was an accident, and the accident proved to be very useful because it kind of gave me the idea to incorporate some reds into the background here. Yeah, it spices it up quite a bit. Quite a bit. I need to articulate the hair a little bit more there. That's starting to blend in a little bit too much. So again, like because her design is reliant on the hair bangs to be seen here, I need to make sure that there's a distinct area where she's showing it. Something like that. Yeah, I screwed up this area too. Shoot. I'm considering even just covering her eye a little bit here. Just make it more interesting. I'm not liking the hair bangs on the far side here as well, so yeah, something like that might be better. I'll have to fix a smile somehow. I'm not too keen on that, but otherwise this is not too bad for an hour and a half. It's got quite a lot done here. Maybe close the eyes a little bit more. Just... yeah, these flowers still bothering me, but for now I think I'm gonna call it for the stream. It's been an hour and a half, so getting a little bit tired here, just need a little break. So hopefully you enjoyed the stream here. Yeah, again, this is Revy from Black Lagoon, so maybe I'll do the character justice after I get a second opinion when my eyes are fresh. So hopefully you enjoyed watching, and I'll see you next time.